dealing with Mesmers can be quite hard, especially for new players. So in this video I want to explain how to deal with them as any class. I will not make a separate video for each elite spec that Mesmer has. I will just talk about Mesmer in general, how to deal with it, because it doesn't really matter which elite spec you face for the most part. They are all somewhat similar how you can counter them. So I put all of those tips in one video. So the first tip is, as always, protection is extremely strong. Currently a lot of people are playing power Mesmer builds. Power Virtuoso, Power Mirage, Power Chrono, all of them are viable in competitive modes. So protection can help you a lot with denying the damage they put out. It's not as strong as against other power builds that don't have that much boon removal, because Mesmer has baseline, especially Power Mesmer, a lot of boon removal baked into its kit. So if the protection gets stripped, it doesn't have any value for you. That is true, but if it does not get stripped, that's the part. You get 33% less damage. That's really important to understand. The next thing that is also quite important is weakness. Weakness is really good against any power build, but also against a condition Mesmer. It might be beneficial to get it on, because they can dodge less often, and therefore they can't get as much defense as they normally would have. That's really important to understand. So weakness is even against condition builds really beneficial to apply. And this especially applies against Mirage. Mirage is a build that not only needs the dodges as a defensive tool, but also needs the dodges to deal damage with the ambush skills. So if the dodge regeneration, the endurance regeneration, is lower because of weakness, that helps double to deal with them. So against the Mirage, always try to apply weakness to them. It's really strong. The next thing that's very important, especially against Virtuosos, Conti Virtuosos in particular, is they can easily spike you with confusion. Sometimes you get confusion up to 20 stacks of confusions just with one combo. This is most of the time deadly if you don't know how to deal with it, because confusion is designed in a way that deals damage to you when you activate a skill, and this activation of a skill is also skills that don't deal any damage. It just has to be a skill. This is really important because, for example, a weapon swap or element swap is also counted as a skill activation. This is really important, especially, for example, for elementalists, if they want to swap to water to cleanse a condition. This cleanse will, even if it cleanses the condition, the confusion, it will still proc the confusion tick one time. And if you have 20 confusion, it might be that the cleanse that you want to use to cleanse the confusion is so much damage that you go into down state. So be aware of that. So how can you deal with confusion? So if you get hit by a confusion skill, then you have to deal with it. Of course, if you can avoid it, that's even better. But if you get hit by confusion, my tip, especially if you have 20 confusion, is just wait it out. Confusion damage is actually really high, but the duration is really low. Most of the time in competitive modes, it's only 3 to 5 seconds. So if you can wait those amount of times and don't activate any skills, no auto attacks, no weapon swapping, nothing, and then you can use everything after that and you get no damage from that. So if you can kite, if you can LOS, all of that you can do, just don't use skills. If you can wait for 3 seconds, all of the burst is gone. That's really important to understand. That's how you counterplay confusion. It might feel unintuitive and it's really not that fun, but that's how you can do it. Now, an important tip for all Mesmer builds, doesn't really matter which Mesmer you face, clone generation is extremely important for them, because all of their skills, you can see here, they get amplified when they have more clones. So if you can kill the clones consistently, either with AoEs, or if the Mesmer fighting is untargetable because of distortion, is even stealthed, just use the time to kill the clones. It might seem stupid at first, because it's not the real target, but it denies so much value from their shatters and all their skills most of the time, for example, the healing skill here as well. If you can do that consistently, it neuters the damage, the boon application and all this stuff. It's really important. That's also a very good point, because often new people get confused by all of the clones because they can't get the real Mesmer, the real player. If you kill the clones in AoE, so if you kill the clones before the Mesmer can come back out of stealth or back from kiting, you don't get confused that easily. So that's, for new players, really important that you, of course, try to focus the real Mesmer. But if you can't do it, or if there is not a good reason to do so because he's invulnerable or whatever, go for the clones. Use the time elsewhere. That's important. Next thing, the spear is extremely strong on all Mesmer specs. It's a power weapon and it has Boon Rip baked into it, it has stuns. So how does it work? If the 2 skill lands with the outer ring, it will empower the next spear skill. And the most important ones are the 4 and the 5. The 4 will spawn now 2 illusions. And they crippled. And if the target is already crippled, they will immobilize. So that's really important that you get immobilized by this if you get hit by the second skill. If you can now dodge either the second skill or the 4th skill, so either one of them is fine, you will not get immobilized. That's important to understand. Also, it removes a lot of boons. So this skill you should not get hit by. If you can't dodge mind the gap all the time because it's on a 6-second cooldown, that's fine. It's also might be quite fast with quickness. Try to avoid the skill that follows with it. So either the teleport, the mental collapse, because that's then a stun. And a 2-second stun, most of the time you will die to it if you don't stun break it. So either avoid the second skill, the ring, or avoid the stun that follows, or the wound removal and immobilize. But of course, if you can deny the second skill, either by blinding them, dodging them, or even walking close to them so that they don't get the clarity buff from the outer ring, that is totally fine as well, you know. You don't have to always dodge the 4 or the 5. You can also dodge the 2 and deny the follow-up. It's really smart as well. So that's how you play against the spear. Next thing is also really important for all classes, line of sight. Try to line of sight to deny most of the damage, because most of the damage is actually needs a target or needs to be visible. So you need a valid path to the target. So that's really important to understand. You can also go for kiting and no pot spots, especially in PvP, that's really strong. So if you go to no pot spots, the 5 skill will not teleport to you. That can be really helpful to deny their stun or just their damage in general, because it's a melee spear. It's really important to understand. Kiting and line of sighting can be really helpful. Now to the next tip. Virtuoso blade songs, so the F skills of Virtuosos, have a cast time and they need a target. And they can't be fired backwards. That's really important to understand. So if you can walk through them or walk in a way that they can't target you because you are behind them at some point, they can't use the blade songs. That's really important to understand, because that denies them their really important skills. That's also true for Mantra of Distraction actually. It's an instant cast mantra, that is true. But you can only cast it against foes that are in 180 before you. If they're behind you, if they can't be hit by this. So if you always, as a melee build for example, walk through the Mesmer, it's really hard for them to hit you permanently with those skills that need a target that is in front of them. Really important to understand. And that's also true for range builds, of course. So the range in front of the Mesmer is way easier for them to deal with than ranged behind them. If they're behind them, most of their skills won't work anymore. That's really important to understand. And now the last tip. Mesmer has a lot of instant cast abilities. So even if you emob them, if you stun them, they still can do a lot of stuff while they are stunned and emobbed, for example. So it's really important to understand that you should be aware of this, that they can teleport, that they can stun you, that they can go invulnerable. So if you can force those skills when it's not important, then you can go on and they are a big easy target because they're actually quite squishy. They are light armor class and they don't have that much health. So it's really important to understand that the instant casts are really good, but if you can force them early, then they don't have them later when they need it. So the instant cast skills are really beneficial to keep an eye out when they are up, when they are not up. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video.